All right, welcome to a brand new edition of Between the Links on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network and streaming on the Loudmouth MMA YouTube page. Very excited for this week's show. My name is Mike Heck. I'm your host because this Saturday night in Las Vegas, Nevada, it's happening. UFC 246, the return of Conor McGregor taking on Donald Cowboy Cerrone, the first UFC event since before Christmas time. So I know a lot of you guys watching and listening right now, you're fired up, you're pumped up, and most of the show is going to focus on UFC 246, and joining me on this adventure is the esteemed panel. First, Mr. Keith Schillan, who has just been an absolute nightmare to follow on social media during these NFL playoffs. He is the Julian Edelman of the panel and is ready to verbally jump up and down on the vehicles of the rest of the guys here. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, but listen, this is what I'm going to do. When you insult me, I'm going to stay focused, and I'm going to say a prayer for you, and I'm not going to give in to him. I'm going to stay focused. And that's what I'm going to do. You can follow all my work at SHERDOG, CAGESIDE Press, and all the shows here, including the newest show, the MMA Takeover, hosted by me. It's a one-man show, so that's the newest show. So the official takeover has started of the Loudmouth MMA.
So you're telling me that the show is just you?
I mean, I have guests and stuff, but yeah.
Oh, thank God. All right. Craig Allen is back, and I know he's got a little sour taste in his mouth after last week's show, but I have a feeling Craig is like a volcano right now. He is ready to erupt in Canada. How are you, sir?
Mike, listen, it's simple. Last week did not go my way, and I want to bring a couple things to the table. I bought this shirt a long time ago, and I wore it on a previous audio episode of the show, but nobody could see it. So the shirt is a Pro Wrestling One, Montreal Screwjobs, because I got absolutely screwed out of a win last week, which was insane. OJ Simpson was totally out. He should have been able to get the win. I should have been the one moving on to the finals. Now, as far as MMA TakeOver, it's a great show until Keith Schillan forgets Michelle Pahea's name and spends 5 minutes umming and ahhing and saying, oh, I never took any notes. So thanks so much for bringing that show to the network, Keith. Love the previews and whatnot. Otherwise, great show. You should definitely go check it out. Davidson, there's no way you make it past even the third question tonight. And listen, I think I finally met my match on this show. I think we're going to go hard in the paint, and I'm going to come out with a hard-fought win here.
I like the spunk out of Craig Allen this week. We have Mr. Davidson Baker here. His 49ers looked pretty darn good on Saturday as they head to the NFC Championship game against the Green Bay Packers this weekend. How are you, Davidson?
Doing fantastic, especially with the knowledge that I don't have to stare through my TV set at Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll across the field for a third time, because that would have scared the bejeebies out of me. But regardless, happy to be back once again on this fine show with this fine panel, and ready to do some work and prove the doubters wrong with this massive size chip on my shoulder. And by the doubters, I mean Craig Allen, especially speak it into existence.
And if you follow me on Twitter, I teased a very big special guest, and as I hope my reputation will always be in this crazy sport of ours, I have delivered the goods. We've had many great guests, many great moments on this program, but I figured with UFC 246 coming up on Saturday, we can't just have a moment. We have to have our first schmoment on Between the Links. The Schmo is here. How are you, sir?
Well said. Thank you for having this Schmo. Does this mean the floor is mine right now to give some sort of preamble speech?
Sure.
How we doing? UFC 246 National Championship game is on the line this evening. That's all I can talk about because my Chicago Bears are absolutely atrocious. Could we steal Tom Brady, though, from the Patriots?
Don't even say that.
Big off season, because I certainly don't have any faith in the biscuit, Mitchell Trubisky. Gosh, got that draft wrong. No Deshaun Watson, no Patrick Mahomes. Thanks very much, Bears management. But I'm very excited to be on the show. Conor McGregor, the Notorious, is back against Cowboy Cerrone, a fan favorite fight. Cannot wait to chat about that. And Clemson, the underdog, again in the national championship game. Jeez Louise, when are people going to learn to stop doubting Dabo Swinney?
I love it. Everyone's on fire tonight, and let's just get rolling with all this energy right now. As always, the rebuttal rule is in effect. Let's get going here. Conor McGregor, as the Schmo just put it so eloquently, he's going to fight Donald Cerrone. It's going down this Saturday. It is officially UFC 246 fight week. Conor is back, and when Conor fights, everybody is talking about it. The coverage is frantic. It takes over the sports world for that week. I'm fired up for this event, but I've seen a lot of people say that this doesn't feel quite like a Conor McGregor fight coming up, that the buzz isn't in the air like it normally is for a McGregor fight week in Las Vegas. So, Craig, we're going to start with you this week. Does this feel like a typical Conor McGregor fight week in your opinion? Did you wake up this morning with that excitement in your belly like you did maybe 2 years, 4 years, 5 years ago?
Did I ever wake up with excitement for a Conor McGregor fight? Yeah, I mean, of course I did. Really, I did. But as far as this one, no, it's really weird. The amount of buzz that's going into it, you get a couple of Conor McGregor interviews. You get a Donald Cerrone interview where he's signing a can of Budweiser for Brett Okamoto. And then we just move into fight week where we're already promoting a fight that was originally billed as a co-main event just a few weeks ago, but it's no longer the co-main event. It's the first fight on the main card with Anthony Pettis and Diego Ferreira. We're completely forgetting about Holly Holm and Raquel Pennington, which is just odd because this is a big card with Conor McGregor coming back. It's the return, and it feels like the air is completely out of the balloon. Listen, I enjoyed the interview with the Papa John Schnatter guy where he said that he ate 40 pizzas in 30 days. That was more exciting than any single Conor McGregor interview I've seen leading up to this fight. I bet you this does under 500,000 buys. I'm not into it. I don't think the fans are into it. They're
10
saying
seconds.
more negative things than they are positive. It just doesn't seem like a great fight week so far.
Davidson, what do you think? It's only Monday after all, but do you agree with Craig's sentiment or do you look at it differently?
Largely, yeah, I do. It's a little subdued, but I think it was somewhat expected. But think about the circumstances surrounding the fight itself. And I understand the allure of red panty night to casuals, and especially a lot of that comes from the fact that animosity normally between Conor and Party B, whoever that may be, is what drives those pay-per-view numbers up. We're not going to get that here, and I think that's obvious to the viewer's eye. He's not fighting Justin Gaethje, a madman on a winning streak. He's not fighting Tony Ferguson, a fight that, you know, we all kind of expected as a formality after Ferguson captured interim gold. Yeah, Cowboy he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. What he's done in the sport, you know, it's going to be very difficult to replicate. Some records he's set might not ever be broken. But if it's anybody other than the Irishman standing across from Cowboy Cerrone, it's headlining UFC North Dakota in February. I mean, let's just be honest here. That's the role that Cowboy has, you know, excellently taken on in his career. And, you know, kind of as Craig said, it's been, you know,
10 seconds.
A little bit of tempered excitement. And because of the fact that it's Cowboy, despite, you know, from a stylistic standpoint, I love the fight. I think a lot of other people do. But outside of dollars and cents filling up the UFC's pockets, it's a fight that doesn't mean all that much as far as the landscape is concerned.
Schmo, you might look at it a little bit differently because you're in that area. You're going to be there for fight week. You have a more local sense of the quote-unquote buzz and anticipation in the air heading into Saturday. Are you feeling that right now on this Monday evening?
I'm totally feeling it. I disagree with you guys, and here's where I'm going to come from. It's definitely going to be a much different Conor McGregor fight this time around than what we've seen before. Coming off a loss, coming off the Mayweather stuff, Cowboy Cerrone, big veteran, coming off a loss himself. It doesn't meet the allure. I'll contest this. We didn't even know this was going to be a pay-per-view fight until McGregor, for this specific fight card at this time away here at T-Mobile Arena here in Las Vegas in January. We didn't know till late in 2019 until they actually signed on the dotted line. The card around it, that might not be as flattering, but I'll say this. Cowboy Cerrone's got all the record books. Remember these guys were supposed to fight, arguably, at one point in time? Remember when RDA pulled out of that fight, that lightweight belt fight, and then he was waiting on whether he was going to be the one to step up, but no, it was Nate Diaz. These guys have a history here. We haven't heard the full buildup. Conor McGregor, he's older. He's showing a lot more respect for his opponent and Cowboy Cerrone. But guess what? On Wednesday, they're not doing an open workout. Those guys are going to get to go at it right back and forth on stage on Wednesday. And we'll find out right then and there if this is going to be about a cowboy or a cowgirl to Conor McGregor.
Keith, you're always a positive presence on this show. What do you think?
Yeah, I actually am going to agree with with Schmo that the buildup will rise when we have the press conference on that. But this is something that me and Ben Duffy talked on the inaugural show, the MMA Takeover, which can be viewed on Mondays and Fridays on the Loudmouth MMA Takeover. Listen, the UFC hasn't pushed it, but one big reason is things that's going on in people's lives. You had the holidays, you had college football, you have NFL playoffs. That kind of draws people's attention away. But the biggest reason is Conor hasn't won in forever. I mean, his last two bouts, we got like an oversaturation of Conor McGregor. The point where the Floyd Mayweather bout was so much attention. The fourth press conference, no one even watched because they had too much. And then when he had all this attention, he lost. What made Conor such a big star in his rise through 2015 or 14, 15, 16? He spoke bolder than anybody and then actually backed it up. He went against the featherweight GOAT, the long-reigning champion, and knocked him out with the first punch he threw, 13 seconds. He was willing to go up 2 weight classes.
10 seconds.
He was in Madison Square Garden getting 2 belts after he's predicted way back when he made his debut, holding them both over his shoulder. 2015, 2016 is long gone. Cam Newton and Matt Ryan were the MVPs back then, and both guys are bumps. But let me say one last thing. I got to call Craig out. Craig, I appreciate you saying that Conor, this pay-per-view is going to do less views than the most recent episode of the MMA Takeover, but I think you might be a little off in your numbers.
It's going to be huge pay-per-views.
Good Lord. That might have been the best opening round in the history of this show. But with that being said, Craig Allen gets the 10 points. Love that opening round. I am fired up for the rest of the show, that's for sure. So let's kind of look at this at a different level, because we've talked about this fight on the show on a number of different levels here. We have, the legend, the allure of Conor McGregor versus a legend in the fight game and Cowboy Cerrone. We've discussed how Cowboy's being overlooked. We've talked about a lot of the potential angles that the fight along with the aftermath can take. And one thing we haven't really discussed is what a win can do for both guys. So let's look at it through this lens, Davidson Baker. To me, this is a win-win for Donald Cerrone. He's a legend. He's the ultimate yes man when it comes to fighting. If he loses, I don't think it hurts his legacy much. If he wins, it's massive. And on the flip side, if Conor wins, he has options. If he loses, it's a setback. It's 2 losses in a row, but he's still Conor McGregor, and yet he will still have options. So in your opinion, who benefits more from a win and why? Conor McGregor or Donald Cerrone?
Well, I mean, I think the simple answer here is Conor, but the proper way to put it is I think it absolutely devastates Conor's, trajectory more with a loss than it does so Cerrone with the win. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say something that probably wouldn't surprise a lot of people either. I think it helps the UFC for Conor to win more than it helps Conor himself for obvious reasons. These are things we all know, given how profitable it is for the UFC to trot out not only Conor McGregor in any capacity, but a streaking Conor McGregor, an active Conor McGregor, someone, like someone that is on a win streak, someone trajectorying towards the top. A win for Cowboy, all it really does, it notches another win. It maybe adds another finish should he win in that fashion. The highlight will go down in history. The night and occasion will be something Cowboy will never forget. But what does it set Cowboy up for next? I mean, Kevin Lee, the winner of Paul Felder and Dan Hooker, and that's all fine and good. But if Conor loses this fight, it is absolutely devastating to the trajectory of where he's
10
going
seconds.
next, because I think a lot of people are going to bail on the idea that Conor will ever get back to where he was. Cowboy has lost fights to the top of the top at lightweight and welterweight for quite some time. But as far as making every penny the UFC can out of Conor for as long as they can, it's the UFC that's got the most to lose here, in my opinion.
All right, Schmo, what do you think? Whose career takes a bigger trajectory with a win on Saturday? McGregor or Cerrone?
I think McGregor has a lot more to lose than Donald Cerrone. I like what you just mentioned with all those points above. With a win here with Cowboy, who does he get next? He's fighting a guy who came off a loss. He's already lost to Tony Ferguson. He's already lost to the guys at the top of that division. What's he going to do? He doesn't get all of a sudden shoot to the cannon. With McGregor winning at 170 pounds, he gets a lot more out of this because he gets to put himself as arguably the alternate in that April Brooklyn fight card against Khabib and Tony Ferguson. He's going to be able to slide right in there because of his popularity and, let's face it, his relationship with the boss man and the head honchos of the UFC. He's going to be put in a situation where he can get to pick the fights that he wants to go to. But let's say he loses this fight. Where does all the steam go from there? Where does Conor go next? Ask yourself this question. If Conor McGregor loses this fight, who does he fight next? Does he do the trilogy with Nate Diaz? Where does he go? He's coming off. I mean, Cowboy, win or lose, his popularity is going to stay sky high. He's got the records. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, as we've mentioned above. Cowboy's got a lot less to work with here. Conor's got a lot to lose here.
Very interesting to think about, Keith, because this fight can create some big avenues for both guys. And I know you've gone on record even before this fight was booked that if Donald Cerrone fights Conor McGregor and wins, doesn't matter how long he's been in the UFC, you could strap the rockets to him. He becomes one of the biggest stars in the sport. You've been saying this for a while now. So depending on who wins on Saturday, which avenue is bigger and brighter with the win? Cerrone Lane or McGregor Avenue?
Yeah, I mean, just to go off that point, Donald Cerrone is more popular right now than Nate Diaz was before he fought Conor. I mean, people forget that. Nate Diaz was an underdog against Michael Johnson, the fight that got him the Conor fight. Conor has a lot more to lose. I mean, the reason why is Conor is a true contender for a title. Donald Cerrone really isn't a true contender in either welterweight or lightweight. I mean, you look at, as the Schmo was saying, looking at lightweight, when he faced upper echelon, the top guys, Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, the last two fights, he got smoked. Look at welterweight. His last 4 against ranked opponents, Jorge Masvidal, Robbie Lawler, Darren Till, Leon Edwards, he's 0-4. He's not a true – I mean, obviously people are attracted to him due to his exciting style, due to his big – his personality, due to his willingness to fight anybody. But not many people view him as an elite talent. That is not the case when it comes to Conor. Conor, if he loses, this should be the biggest – I shouldn't say the biggest – the worst loss in his
10
UFC
seconds.
career. We'd be going on close to 4 years since he last won a fight. And if you think about it, right now as we stand, he's probably already behind Masvidal and Edwards for the next title shot at welterweight, maybe even Colby Covington. And then Ferguson and Gaethje is probably ahead of him for title shots. So if he loses to Cerrone, as Schmo said, what do you do next? The Diaz trilogy, maybe the RDA fight you never got? Like, his stock plummets, like, God knows, lower than we've seen in a very long time for him.
Craig Allen, what do you think? Again, the question is, with a win, who is it more impactful for? Cerrone or McGregor? Not who has the most to lose, but who gains more with a win?
So tonight, I'm kind of playing double duties. I'm producing the show, I'm answering the questions, I'm reading the questions, and then I listen to Davidson Baker, and it absolutely scrambles my brain, and I couldn't focus on anything because Davidson went one way and then another way, and then Schmo agreed with him, so now I don't even know what to think. So Davidson kind of made a bit of an argument as to the fact that Cerrone could definitely win off of this. I would disagree there just a little bit. You started down that road, Davidson. I would say, he's on a 2-fight losing streak. If he loses one more, he's off the old town road. And he can continue to do music videos with Billy Talent. He can do movies and he can do TV. He can be the next Dean of Mean, Keith Jardine. But for Cowboy Cerrone, for Conor McGregor, a win here is paramount. I know you guys kind of sleep on the fact, do we want another Diaz fight? I think that people probably do ultimately want another Diaz fight. I mean, you had 1.6 million and just a little over 1.3 million pay-per-view buys on the first and the second. And those are, second and third only to UFC 229. So I think even with a loss, McGregor doesn't lose too much. I think he still has that fan support, but with a win, you can set up Masvidal, you can set up Gaethje, you can set up a Khabib rematch. All those bigger fights, even Kamaru Usman, it just sets up way much more than it would for Cowboy Cerrone.
All right, Craig, I'm going to throw it back to you here because there were some interesting points. And again, the question has been brought up. What happens if Donald Cerrone wins? Where does he go? So let me ask you, if Donald Cerrone beats Conor McGregor on Saturday, what makes sense next for him? This is a recency bias kind of a sport. Does it really go anywhere? Does he get close to a title shot? Does he get a number one contender fight? Where does he go?
So before the BMF title came out, who was the real BMF? Who's the guy that owns a ranch that's called the BMF Ranch and has his name on Budweiser cans? It's probably Donald Cerrone. So really, who should he fight? If he wins, you give him the fight with Masvidal. I don't know if Masvidal would want it. I think it's a really winnable fight for him. But that's probably the likely next step if Cerrone is able to beat McGregor this weekend. I don't see him moving back down to 155. He continues to compete at 170, especially at this point in his career. And that's probably the biggest fight that you can drop him into, especially with a win over Conor McGregor.
Keith, do you want a rebuttal or no?
Well, I want to answer the same question that Craig just answered.
Sure.
So I just want to repeat something that the Schmo said. I just want to add off of it. If Conor loses, think about this. Schmo talked about that. We didn't even know if there's going to be a pay-per-view fight. A lot of the hardcore fans were saying that Conor doesn't deserve being a pay-per-view anymore, being that he's not a champion. He shouldn't be headlining a pay-per-view. Imagine if he loses again. If Conor loses, he pretty much loses all the hardcore fans. The casuals will still be there. But us, the hardcores, we're going to be saying, man, this guy's lost 2 in a row. He hasn't won in 4 years. Why is he headlining? We're going to be saying those things. So that's what he's going to lose. As far as what happens to Cerrone, I'll give you 2 options. One at lightweight and one at welterweight, whichever weight class he wants to go. I don't think Jorge Masvidal, if I'm him, I'm still going for the title. I think that makes sense. But how about Nate Diaz? I mean, you both beat Conor. It's a rematch. It'd be a fight that he probably wants to get back. And then at welterweight, I mean, Edwards doesn't really move the needle, and I think Masvidal faces Usman. But how about Colby Covington? I mean, you get a guy who likes to talk. You'd have Donald Cerrone coming off a win. I mean, that'd be a lot of fun back and forth. How about that fight?
Interesting. That would tickle some fancies, I think. Schmo, I mean, you're one of the guys who really brought up the question here. If Cerrone wins, where does he go?
I think he's got the options at 155 and at 170. But the key thing here is I think the winner of this fight is going to be first in line for that April 18th in Brooklyn card is the alternate for somebody potentially falling through, which we have a history of falling through for Khabib and Tony Ferguson. And the winner of this fight is going to be first in line as the alternate fighter. And then from there, I like the idea of Jorge Masvidal if it's 170. Whatever is a clean fight at 155, what happens? I mean, maybe he does get a taste of going a crack at some of the top guys that he's lost to, the Justin Gaethjes, the Tony Ferguson rematches. Just depends. He gets his options, but definitely Conor McGregor. Man, a lot is riding. I'm going to end off on saying this. If Conor McGregor loses this fight, man, oh man, the biggest losers is the business. It's the UFC. It's the moneymaker.
That's right. Davidson, where does Cerrone go with the win?
I seem to be a little high on a little less high on the prospects of where he could go from here should he win than the rest of my contemporaries, simply just because of the fact that, as the Schmo touched on, a lot of guys ahead of Cowboy are either booked or ahead of him in line or have already beat him for a spot in that order towards the title picture. I think, if he wins, I think it should not be surprising at all to people that we see UFC Greensboro announced in May and him fighting either Kevin Lee or the winner of Paul Felder and Dan Hooker, particularly if he is still as dead set serious as he was from the moment that switch flipped when he had his child, that, oh, okay, this is what it's all about. I want to go and grab the title. I want to go and win the belt. If that is still his MO right now, he's not going to move back up to 170 just yet, even if it makes things a little bit easier for him on fight week. And, I mean, you're not going to fight Gaethje. You're not going to fight Tony. So it's either got to be another one of those guys that's trending up in that direction. And it's hard for me to think of anybody outside of Kevin Lee, Paul Felder, Dan Hooker at the moment.
Keith Chillen wants to use that rebuttal. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know why I'm even wasting my rebuttal by going after Davidson. But did Davidson just really say that if Donald Cerrone beats Conor McGregor, who and I still have to go back to Craig for saying that somehow Craig said that Conor McGregor's pay-per-view is going to do less than 500,000. That would be 1/5 of the pay-per-views he did just over a year ago when he faced Khabib. He's going to do 1/5. So out of 5 people who ordered, only one of them is going to order it this time. That is insane, first of all. Now back to – but that might have got topped by Davison saying if Cowboy Cerrone beats the biggest name in the history of sport, his next fight is going to be in Greensboro? I don't know what Greensboro is.
Take a deep breath.
That's his next fight?
Take a deep breath.
Greensboro?
Who's he going to fight then? Who's he going to fight then, Keith?
I just told you.
Fight.
Co-main event.
Who's going to fight?
I mean, underneath Usman and Masvidal, or under Steve and Dana Cormier, Donald Cerrone would be a star. Listen, Donald Cerrone beats Conor McGregor. His next thing, you know the next person he's meeting? He's going on the friggin' Conan O'Brien show. He's going on friggin' Ricky Lake and Arsenio. The friggin' Schmo is actually going to want to interview him. Instead of that's what's going to happen. He's not going to be going to freaking Greensboro, where I don't even know what state that is in.
North Carolina.
We've had some bad answers on this show, but that one is way up there. Listen, Donald Cerrone beats Conor McGregor. He's probably headlining a pay-per-view. Never mind fighting in Greensboro.
Man, Davidson, you have anything else to add?
I respect. Hold on. Let me finish. Think about this. Donald Cerrone beat Mike freaking Perry and Alex Hernandez, and people were calling for a title shot. And you think the response is if he beats Conor McGregor, the headline Greensboro? And who didn't even say he was going to face? Like, what? I don't know what he said.
Kevin Lee or the winner of Dan Hooker and Paul Felder.
I remember who beating Conor McGregor to facing Daniel Hooker. And hold on, is that if Daniel Hooker beats Felder, or is that if he loses? Like, I'm not even sure. Like,
just watch out for it, man. I'm sticking by my guns. I know I've said some stupid things on this show before, but I really and truly believe if Cowboy does win this fight, what's Cowboy gonna do? Just sit on the sidelines? Yeah, he's been known for that. He's been known to do that.
Yeah, they're gonna waste the headline Greensboro on UFC Fight Pass or ESPN Plus. You know what? Is that like Greensboro? Is that higher than Moncton, or is that lower than like?
Man, I'm just glad you pronounced it properly. And also, my big takeaway is the fact that you watched the Ricky Lake show.
We went back to the 90s with Ricky Lake at Arsenio Hall. Oh, my God. The 10 points goes to Sam Kinison, a.k.a. Keith Schillan. That was unbelievable. That was like the Carlos Condit versus Robbie Lawler of rebuttals. Like, that is a full-on favorite for rebuttal of the year, and we're only in January. We're not even 2 weeks through January yet. This is unbelievable. But let's continue here, because we're going to get a little more specific on this later on. But our good friend at the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, Marcel Dorff, created a bit of social media buzz a few weeks ago when he tweeted out the full fight card for UFC 246. And most people, I'd say, at least from what I saw, I'd say 70 to 75% of the people said that this card is weak, it's not deep, it's a subpar card for a UFC pay-per-view type event. So we're going to start with the Schmo here. Schmo, what do you think of this card the UFC has put together, and did they do it right?
Well, I'll say this. If Conor McGregor's name was not on this card and somebody saw this card, no one in their right mind at all would ever think this is a pay-per-view card. So I think that the reason why this is a pay-per-view card is because of Conor McGregor. With that said, from a business standpoint, UFC's doing just fine. They got McGregor, they got Cowboy, they got some names, they got Macy Barber. They're putting up some good stuff. I mean, from a from a hardcore fans, when you look at a fight like Andre Fili and Sadiq Youssef, the hardcore people that have been watching Sadiq Youssef, the guy that's just been running, training in the UFC since coming on Dana White's Contender Series, there are some good fights in this card. But from a casual standpoint, from pay-per-view, man, the Schmo was over there in D.C., Alistair Overeem versus Jair Rosenstrike. This is kind of the equivalent of that card here. You don't have huge names, sexy names going at it, and Conor McGregor is saving the card. From a business standpoint, they could charge pay-per-view money. They're going to get the reviews because of that. They're going to be able to sell it. But man, oh man, if Conor McGregor's name was not on this card, no one's watching it.
Keith, what do you think, buddy?
Yeah, so I gave myself a headache after my last response. I actually been wanting to disagree with Schmo. I wanted to go after the Schmo, but I'm agreeing with the guy again. If Donald Cerrone was facing anybody else, if he was facing Kamaru Usman for the title, we'd have a big, huge issue. There'd be a lot more uproar. But this is Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor doesn't need help. It could be Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone, and the rest of the undercard being midgets versus dwarfs, and I'd still buy the pay-per-view. I understand why people are upset, and I actually agree with you. From top to bottom, it's actually got a lot of really good talent, a lot of good prospects. Sadiq Youssef, Macy Barber, Nasrat Haqparast, Askar Askarov, O'Day Osman. Those are really, really good prospects. I'm high on all of them. But the pay-per-view portion is lacking besides the main event, and it's because they don't have a true co-main event. As Craig said earlier, on the Countdown show, they didn't even feature Holly Holm versus Raquel Pennant. They went all the way down to the
10 seconds,
the opening card. So, I mean, if we put a different co-main event, then I don't think that should. I think which would have made sense, and I know it might have been timing, but Conor McGregor's going to bring eyeballs. Who needs eyeballs? How about Leon Edwards? How about Leon Edwards versus Tyron Woodley as a co-main event? Your big thing about Leon Edwards, you can't get him over. How about a guy get like Edmund Shabazi and get him on the card too? That's a guy that we think is a future star. Put him against, not saying co-main event, but get him. I think there's a little bit lacking, but overall, I don't think it's, you have Conor. You don't need anything else.
Craig, it's interesting because even though he sort of was given crap, Scott Coker takes over Bellator, and there was like a ton of criticism about, you know, these legend fights and the Kimbo Slice Data 5000 fights and the Shamrock Gracie fights. And I think the biggest problem was not just the fights themselves, but I feel like the prelims were better than the main card. Like, we weren't building up future stars. We weren't showing guys like MVP and Michael Chandler and guys like that on those types of cards. We were more focused on the legends and sort of the gimmicky fights. The UFC is getting criticism here for this card overall with the depth of it. But in your opinion, should they? Is the criticism warranted in your opinion?
I threw it out there on Twitter this morning just to try and get a read on what people were thinking. Did the classic letter grade. 73% responded with a B. I also threw it out there last night on Twitter when I noticed that the embedded had, of course, Fahea, Pettis, and then your main event. And I thought, gee, that's awfully weird. Threw it out there on Reddit, and the first comment that I got was, yeah, that's because people don't like women's fights in the co-main event. And a lot of people like that, which I thought was ridiculous. Now, Keith brought up a good name in Edmund Shabazian. There's a reason why you wouldn't want to put Edmund Shabazian on this card with Holly Holm so close to the top. It's just that Ronda Rousey connection. So you don't need him there. But there are a lot of great prospects, and everybody kind of went through some of the fights and brought up some of the really good prospects. The big one for me is at 145, taking on Chaz Skelly. It's Grant Dawson. I think he could really have a future at 145 pounds. He's like that next guy, not just in the division, but in MMA and in general. But my thoughts on the depth of the card, it's great to see prospects matched up with, you know, real vets. You look at that fight with Askarov and Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott's already fought for a title, and it's very early on the prelims. So it's a very, very deep card. But overall, it lacks those star names. It's just nice that you have a former champion Pettis, former champion Holm, and, of course, McGregor at the top that kind of saves it. So if I could give it a letter grade, I would agree with the crowd and probably go with B.
Davidson, what do you think? Are they doing this right to showcase some of the up-and-coming talent, or are they doing this terribly wrong?
I think they're doing it like they always have, and we really shouldn't be surprised. My big takeaway after all of that kind of stir-up came out on Twitter is, why are people stunned? Let's just think back to Conor's previous headliners with obviously UFC 205 being the anomaly with Madison Square Garden and all of that pageantry and blah, 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 blah. Obviously, that doesn't fit under this circumstance. The only card that's even decent from top of the bill to the pay-per-view opener as far as the casual eye is concerned was 229. I mean, you run down the list, the Diaz rematch, I mean, Tim Means and Sabah Homasi kicked off the card with Mike Perry making his UFC debut on deck against Hyun Gyu Lim. UFC 196, I mean, Corey Anderson and Tom Lawler and Jean Vellante and Ilir Latifi are on the main card. These cards are never built to be stacked. And as we've said, or as Schmo and Craig pointed out, two really good fights on this card that hardcore fans could drool over. Feely versus Yusuf and Askarov versus Elliott. This is how you appease the hardcores that are somewhat tired of Conor McGregor and wondering why we have headliners coming off guys that are coming off losing streaks. You build this card that is good for the hardcores with fights like that down the road, and then you have the casual eyes that are going to flock with Conor at the top of the bill. We really shouldn't be surprised. This is how this was built. This has been happening for a while.
Craig Allen, rebuttal time, volcano eruption.
Davidson, this is what you do on a fight night card in Greensboro, North Carolina. When it's a pay-per-view in Las Vegas, you stack it, you dingus. You look at the last pay-per-view, there are 3 title fights at the top, Davidson. When was the last pay-per-view that you can think of? And I want a response. When was the last pay-per-view you can think of that had a non-title main event?
We're not – okay, it hasn't happened in a while, but Craig, you're missing the entire point. We're not talking about regular pay-per-views. We're not talking about fights in Vegas. We're talking about Conor McGregor cards.
No, we're talking about –
when's the last Conor McGregor card that you looked at that you said, that's a stacked card? 205.
All right. I'm going to help Craig out because Craig needs the points. Listen, so what Davison said is just absolutely false. Well, you said that they don't stack the cards when Conor fights. Well,
UFC 229 was stacked.
That's not. Yeah, 229 was stacked. The fight before that, 205 was stacked.
I said at the very beginning of my point at 205.
Hold on. Yeah. You said that, but hold on. Go two fights before that. UFC 196. The co-main event was Holly Holm, fresh off a knockout of Ronda Rousey, one of the biggest upsets in history, defending her title against Miesha Tate. Go the card before that. It was Chris Weidman defending his title against Luke Rockhold. Go the one before that, or 2 before that. Chad Mendes. Do you know what the co-main event that was? Possibly the greatest fight in history of when. Robbie Lawler, I can't think of his name. Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald went at it. Like, what are you talking about? You
do realize that we're now rewinding back 4 or 5 years.
That's all of his fights, David.
That's all his fights. We've had multiple different. 196 opened up. Nobody knew who Valentina Shevchenko was when she fought Amanda Nunes to open up that card. I mean, John Vellante and Ilir Latifi were on that main card. After a while, it went on the record kind of, or maybe sort of off the record, that Conor didn't like to share pay-per-view points. That's why these cards have been built the way they were. You guys really thought 229 was stacked? 229 was good at best.
Pretty sure Tony Ferguson, Anthony Pettis was one heck of a fight.
That's a great co-main event.
Yeah.
All right, hold on. UFC 202, okay? First fight on the main card, Tim Means versus Sabah Homasi. Then Hyun-Gyu Lim versus Mike Perry.
Who made
Fireworks.
his debut. That was his UFC debut.
Right.
Yeah,
Rick Story versus Donald Cerrone.
That was a great fight.
It was a great fight, but not a huge blockbuster.
Well, we're talking about Cowboy right now.
Donald Cerrone.
Right.
Yeah.
Anthony Johnson versus Glover Teixeira was the co-main event.
Yeah, that's
But that's not a mega stack
that's it.
card.
That's the only one. All the other examples we just showed.
Right. But the question you guys presented to him was, when was the last time, a non-title fight headlined a pay-per-view, and what was sort of under it? That was what was under it.
And that didn't used to happen until the sale of the USC happened either. The Endeavor deal kind of was a big part in all that. People have gone on the record and said that before multiple times, that Endeavor was not really a fan of these pay-per-views coming without, title bouts as its headliner. Now, you can obviously make an exception with Conor McGregor fighting literally anybody. But at the end of the day, I think that we are all just not really on the same page of if these cards were really that stacked or not. If Holly Holm or Miesha Tate falls out,
was coming off a knockout of Ronda Rousey.
if Holly Holm or Miesha Tate, I'll go ahead and give you that one. But even outside of that,
I think she was on like Ellen and Oprah like a week before. Like she was a mega star at the time.
Was she on Ricky Lake though?
She wasn't big enough yet. She wasn't big enough for Ricky Lake.
Okay.
all I'm saying is I don't think people should have been as surprised as they were. This has kind of been a thing for quite some time now.
I'm giving Davidson the 10 points.
I mean, except that it wasn't. It happened once. It happened one other time. So it wasn't a thing.
I also don't think 229 was incredibly stacked like you guys seem to think. I think it was a good card.
Better co-main event.
Better, but
for sure. But I think overall it wasn't as stacked. But you don't need to, which is the point of this whole thing. You don't need to stack it when you have Conor at the top. It's your opportunity to showcase some of that talent. I'm actually a little the one problem I do have is some of the, I would have loved to see Macy Barber, Roxanne Modafferi on this main card. Like, that's an opportunity to put her on there. Yeah, you're going to get eyeballs on her because she's going to be on ESPN, but still, what an opportunity to have her on there, like on a pay-per-view card with Conor McGregor. A lot of people talking about her. They're going to talk about her anyways, but be that as it may, I'm going to give Davidson the 10 points as we move on to the next question. And we touched on this a little bit. Some of you guys threw out fights or multiple fights. Of course, all eyes are on McGregor and Cerrone on Saturday, but there are still great fights on this card, as you guys talked about. There's great storylines as well, some very intriguing pairings. So let's dive a little bit deeper. Keith, we're going to kick things off with you, and you can only pick one. Outside of the main event, what fight on the card has you more intrigued than any other fight? What's your number 2 fight to watch?
I'm going with Sadiq Youssef versus Andre Felix. Youssef is 4-0 under the UFC banner. This is a guy that has – on his contender series, he had one of the best fights against Mike Davis, another prospect that at that time he was undefeated. He was undefeated in boxing, kickboxing, and MMA. Like, he was undefeated. He never lost. And then Sadiq Youssef beats him. He goes on to get wins over Shaman Rice and Gabriel Benitez. 2 quality wins for a guy. He's just 26, so he's just coming into his prime. But the best part is who he's going against. Andre Felix, 29. The guy has a true veteran of the sport, a guy that might be just entering prime himself. A guy who's just outside the top 15 rankings. He's known for his wrestling and his strength. He's well-rounded. He's won 4 of his last 5. And if you really look at it, his one loss to Michael Johnson, that was a win. That should have been a win for him. You go to like MMA decisions, 11 out of the 16 media members gave it for Feely. So it really should be Sadiq Youssef, who I think might be the best prospect in the featherweight division, going against a guy on a 5-fight winning streak.
10 seconds.
So who would probably, if he beat Michael Johnson, would probably be at like 14, 15 in the rankings. So the way I'm looking at it is Sadiq Youssef going into top 15 guy.
Craig?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's hard to have a wrong answer. Keith picked a really good fight. For me, it's a guy that I've been talking about for a long time. If you've been listening to Between the Links, you know that I'm feeding a fed horse at this point. It's Nasrat Haqparast taking on Drew Dober. Drew Dober hasn't been knocked out since 2011. He's susceptible to a submission. And you look at Nasrat Haqparast, out of his 11 wins, 9 of them by knockout or TKO. You look at his last 3 wins. I mean, he lost his debut kind of on somewhat of a short notice to Marcin Held. who had great performances over in Bellator. UFC didn't quite go his way, but he's really regained a footing since the UFC. Just goes to show you how good a competition Held was in just hack press first fight. But since that, he's looked absolutely phenomenal. In the Joaquim Silva fight in the first round, he absolutely downloaded Silva's game plan and then put it on him in the second round. He looked amazing. He's one of those guys that could be a superstar at 155 pounds. And if he's able to get a win this late in the prelims against a proven guy in Drew Dober that, oh, by the way, kind of looks like Stan Smith, I think that's a great way to get a win. So I'm going with hack press and Dober. And for Dober, too, it's
10 seconds.
You beat a really good prospect like that, and you vault yourself higher in the rankings. So it's a great fight for both of them. But look for hack press star to rise even further.
Schmo, we got it all here, man. We got female fights. We have Contender Series debuts. We have guys fighting with their backs against the wall. Some on their last fights of their current deals with the UFC. So there's more to this card than meets the eye here. What's your number 2 fight?
And that's what we're going with. We got to talk about Holly Holm and Raquel Pennington. When was the last time Holly Holm fought as a co-main? And we've heard little about her. Now, this is a rematch fight. This is the second time that she is fighting Raquel Pennington. She won by decision. It was a split decision back at UFC 184, I believe it was. Now, this is why it's intriguing to me, because this is 2 top 5 fighters. This could very well be the end if Holly Holm loses this for that final push in her career, in her storied career, for fighting for contention for that bantamweight strap. She's coming off the loss to Nunez. She was up and down, losing to Cyborg, beating Megan Anderson and Betch Correa. I mean, before that, she had the 3 losses. This could really be it for her. Does she have another title run in her? She's fighting a dangerous fighter who some could argue that she lost that decision when she fought her. Raquel Pennington is also hungry. She's number 5. She's looking to see if she's got it in here to run for that title bout. I think it's all on the line for gold for at both these junctures of both these females' career. Is the winner of this is going to get another crack at getting gold.
10 seconds.
The loser, who knows where their direction is? We saw Cyborg go to Bellator. Who knows where the future is with these two and their promotions this late in their career, and knowing that their promotions are going to take high-end female prize fighters.
All right, Davidson, what is your Garoppolo to the Tom Brady at UFC 246?
Well, quickly, just because Mr. Keith Schillan did steal mine, a great answer, I just want to correct him real quick. And to prove that it was my answer, he said it was 11 of 16 people gave the fight to Fili. It was 11 of 17. Just want to throw that out there. However, so if I had to go to my backup plan, I will. And that my backup plan is Tim Elliott and Askar Askarov is a fight that really intrigues me. It might not intrigue many others, but it really catches my eye, especially because of the fact you got a lot of people out there that question the legitimacy of whether octagon jitters are real. I and many other people, including Dana White himself, have said on the record many times that octagon jitters are 100% real, and you kind of saw those a little bit with Askar Askarov in his debut, even though Brandon Moreno might be fighting better than he ever has in his entire career at the moment. You give him a guy like Tim Elliott, who maybe might not stack up against title contenders, but did fight against Demetrius Johnson, has been in the UFC for a few years, and you think you have to think the UFC thinks pretty highly of a guy like Askar
10
Askarov,
seconds.
who I fully expect to shake off the rust coming into this week. He's won every single one of his fights by way of finish. Tim Elliott, the last 3 of his fights have ended somehow, some way by way of finish. People talk about how 125 is this and 125 is that, trying to downplay it. I love the flyweights, and I think this fight will be a perfect example as to why the division is so good.
I'll tell you what, I didn't think it was possible. I didn't think it was possible to get interested at all in Holly Holm versus Raquel Pennington, but Schmo has found a way to do so. So with that, we're going 4 to the final question of regulation. He gets the 10 points. And we're going to move away from UFC 246 for a moment, because I feel like we're at this point when the year changes and we're like the first couple of weeks, we're seeing articles from some of these major websites about fights we need to see in 2020. Now, obviously, there's some easier answers out there. There's fights that have been rumored or discussed. We've been talking about DC and Stipe for a while. We don't know when or if that's going to happen, but that's out there. So let's try to go beyond the ones that are being discussed, shall we? Let's put on the matchmaker hat here. What fight do we have to see in 2020? And state your case, Craig Allen.
Well, you already took mine and said that I pretty much couldn't use it, so I won't. So I'm going to go way off the map. And I'm not going to say DC and Stipe 3. I already have my case laid out in front of me. we're going to go with Rumble Johnson at heavyweight against Francis Ngannou. I don't care about Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I want to see absolute fireworks. That's a guaranteed knockout. And do either guys really have that great of a gas tank? No, they do not. So they're going to expend all their energy in the first round. And as long as Anthony Johnson comes into this fight and decides not to shoot and try and wrestle, then it should be a pretty good one. So 2 stand-up fighters, Ngannou, Johnson, the winner gets a title shot. I mean, Anthony Johnson right now is kind of the boogeyman. He was a bodybuilder. Now he's maybe coming back into MMA. And I'd like to see if the Schmo could get an interview with him because Brendan Schaub did, and it was absolute garbage. So let's see what happens. Schmo and Johnson, 2020.
He's fighting in 2020. The Schmo will get an interview. We're making that guarantee right now.
I love it. Davidson Baker, 2020 fight we have to see.
Going out on a little bit of a limb here, and I've been one to kind of say that it's really time to kind of pump the brakes on super fights and champ versus champ entities and holding up divisions. But a fight that I am desperate for by the end of the year by 2 females that some people don't believe will ever be on the trajectory towards each other. I want to see Valentina Shevchenko fight Weili Zhang. And beyond a reasonable doubt, I honestly believe that Weili Zhang reminds me a lot of Valentina with how her style plays out and how she is so strong, especially in close range, and is such a polished striker. She really reminds me a lot of Valentina and has ever since watching Weili before she made her debut in the UFC in August of 2018. I'm not implying Weili Zhang is where Valentina Shevchenko meets her match. I'm not implying either that Weili Zhang is where Valentina Shevchenko's reign of terror ends, but I am absolutely implying that if you put Weili Zhang on one side of the Venn diagram and compare it to a lot of these contenders at 125, I think she gives her a run for her money better than a lot of 125ers do. I also think that this is a fight that you could really make a name off of one of these two in a co-main event. Whoever comes out of it is much bigger of a star than they were going into it. Maybe one of the more appealing female versus female super fights, not named Cyborg Nunes, or a potential Valentina Shevchenko and Amanda Nunes trilogy, which, to be quite frank, I don't think any of us see happening anytime soon.
2 very interesting choices here. Schmo, what do you got, man?
Well, I'd like to think GSP's retired, and he says he's retired, but every chance he can get to comment on a fight, Firas Zahabi's always bringing up his name. And if Khabib Nurmagomedov can fight Tony Ferguson and win that fight, which a lot of people expect, the undefeated fighter, if he can go down, can we please see Khabib in the super fight against GSP? Everyone would pay for it. This will be the final fight GSP's career. He's already come back. He wants a taste of gold. Got that against Bisping in the middleweight division. I know he said retired, but he's always commenting. Firas is saying, if he fights him. Well, guess what? Can we finally get it? Can we get the greatest 170-pounder coming down to fight Khabib? Is it at 155? Do they do the 165-pound weight division? It doesn't matter. But let's see these 2 guys fight. Let's see GSP get back in there one final time if he's going to do it, just so we don't have to hear it. And the only reason we're bringing this up is because he's always teasing it. It's always being teased. It's not being put to rest. Until it's finally done
10
being
seconds.
talked about, it's being put to rest. And can we see that fight? That's more intriguing than Conor 2 versus Khabib. Let's see GSP fight him.
I'm hyped up right now, Keith. Put me over the top, buddy.
Well, I'm going to tell you why. First, I'm going to tell you why all their answers sucked. First of all, like Francis Ngannou Francis Ngannou beats Jairzinho Rozenstruik. He got a 4-fight winning streak. What he should do, instead of getting a title shot, he should go against a guy who hasn't won in 4 years. And the last time he did was at light heavyweight. Or we should go with Weili Zhang, who a couple months ago was an underdog to Jessica Andrade. She should be going for a second belt, hold up 2 divisions, go against Valentina Shevchenko. Yeah, that makes sense. Or we talk about getting excited about George Speight, who's won 1 fight in 7 years. He should be the one to get a chance. Not Justin Gaethje. It should be George St. Pierre. No. So you want an out of the box, Dan? I'm actually going to give you an out of the box. I'm going to go out of the organization. I'm going to go over to Bellator. I'm going to get a fight that actually could happen. It could make sense. How about 24-year-old Phenom, a guy that's not even close to his prime yet, not even close to his power. The guy's 16-0. He's got back-to-back stoppage victories in the Bellator Grand Prix already. I'm praying he reaches the finals and faces Pitbull in the finals. Pitbull is the double champion, the greatest fighter in the history of Bellator. He's well-rounded. He's crafty. He's got big power, great takedown defense. He's got tons of experience. I want the GOAT versus the future. I mean, I want a passing of the torch, or maybe not a passing of the torch, just to cement and for Pitbull to finally get it. This would be the biggest fight in the history of Bellator by putting AJ McKee versus Pitbull in the finals. That's a fight that actually could happen.
Wow. How about that? I am jacked up. I wish you did like a fantasy fight card with all 4 of those fights. That'd be super interesting. And I'm in the unfortunate position where I have to eliminate 2 people here. So with that being said, moving on to the finals will be Craig Allen, and he will take on Mount Keith Schillan. What a game this has been. Unbelievable. I wish I could bring all 4 of you guys to the finals, but alas, we cannot do so. Before I let you go, Schmo, it was an honor. You get to watch a national championship game now. I appreciate your time very much. Where can everyone find your great work, sir?
Please follow the Schmo at the Schmo312 on Instagram and Twitter, the Schmo's YouTube channel, the Schmo and the Pro. And I'm going to release this news right now. We're in the works of making the podcast, The Schmo Zone, deconstructing the life of the Schmo, going into the interview, coming out in the next couple of weeks with the marvelous Helen Yee Sports. We're co-hosting it. It's in the works.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Enjoy your coverage out there, man. We'll look forward to seeing it.
Appreciate you guys. See you soon. UFC 246. Let's go.
Have fun at the fights there, Smo.
See you in Houston, buddy.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Davidson, A-plus performance, my man. You just ran into a couple of buzzsaws. It's unfortunate, but I wish I could bring all 3 of you guys to the finals. It's just one of those nights where everybody brought it. That's just the way that the cookie crumbles sometimes. What do you want to say to the folks? You deserve some time to say goodbye.
I want to say that now I have to go reevaluate my life now that I've been called the Bill Walton of Between the Lakes by Craig Allen. And that's definitely going to hit home because, oh, man, I love me some Bill Walton. Have a good one.
So do I.
I love Bill Walton, but yikes, that's going to be hard to recover from.
That was a compliment.
Have a good
Good man, Davidson. All right. Unreal. This is a battle. This is good stuff. Speaking of good stuff, before you head to the finals, it is time for your weekly reminder to subscribe to the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. Because not only do you get this show, you also get the Not Safe for Work podcast with Kyle Steele and the incomparable Frederick Kirby, excuse me. You get Early Stoppage with Craig Allen and John Franklin. You get the return of the Breakdown Show this week as Max Friedman and Marcel Dorff will preview UFC 246. That will, of course, be joined by the Recap Show, the return of the Recap Show, UFC 246. Once that all comes to fruition and ends and the hand is raised between McGregor and Cerrone, John Franklin and Keith Schillan will break down all the action very in-depth. You get MMA yesterday. Yes, we got the return of All Angles with John and Keith breaking down all things McGregor, Cerrone. And then you have the Keith Schillan Show, the MMA Takeover, which is happening twice a week. Did you say it's coming out twice a week, Keith?
That's what the people wanted, twice a week.
That's what the people wanted. All right. And
Not
then
Michelle Pahea.
And I actually think, I think the 3 of us, as a matter of fact, we have something else that may be a little bit juicy that might be in the works as well. So stay tuned. You can only get all the answers if you subscribe to the network on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, anywhere you find your favorite shows. Plus, subscribe to the Loudmouth MMA YouTube channel as well. Craig, 1 to 25.
16.
You got it, man. Right on the money. So, Keith,
I was going to say 16.
you didn't get to guess. How about that? Unreal. It's synergy here on Between the Links. Craig, what do you want to do? First or last?
Yeah, I'm going last.
All right. Keith, interesting question here because we talk about the new year. It's 2020, and there's all these directions and all these things that can happen and all these places we can go. So I want you to transform yourself into one individual, a bald man by the name of Dana White. If you were Dana White right now, what is your #1 New Year's resolution for 2020?
My #1 New Year's resolution is to continue to promote Israel Adesanya. He's the future. I mean, he's undefeated. He's just, this is a guy who's learning on the job, and he's already the best guy in the weight class. He just smoked Robert Whittaker. He's a star with the things he says, his social media presence, his dancing. He's got a little bit of mixture of Conor McGregor and John Jones. I mean, to me, he's a dream promoter. I am trying to get him everywhere. I'm trying to get him on Ricky Lake, Seal, get him out there. He should be on the Tonight Shows. He should be on the sports side. He should be everywhere. That is your star. They want to push Jorge Masvidal. Masvidal, the guy's been in the sport for 17 years. who's been a journeyman, who, I mean, really, he beat Nate Diaz and Ben Askren. He's not the best guy in the world. Israel Adesanya is the best guy in the world. He has bigger star quality. That's the guy that could take the reins from Conor McGregor. He can take the reins from John Jones. He is a dream. Lock him up, sign him, extend his contract, and blast him everywhere because, I mean, there's nothing but stardom with that guy.
All right, Craig, if you're Dana White, what's your New Year's resolution? That's a pretty good answer there.
So you're Dana White in 2019, you're all the way in August, and major MMA outlets are starting to ask you once again, what's the scoop with Zuffa boxing? And you say, hey, it hit some speed bumps. It looks like it might be broken and it's in pieces. But then in January 2nd of 2020, you're talking about the fact that you're trying to make a deal with Al Heyman and Floyd Mayweather. You also have the fact that Clarissa Shields is at some of your events and trying to push a boxing super fight with Amanda Nunes, or some sort of collaboration there. Get Zuffa boxing. Get it going. The fact that DAZN is capitalizing on YouTube stars fighting, and they've had different Logan Paul fights. They have a Jake Paul fight coming up later on. They've kind of cornered that market. They're kind of like the Bellator of boxing right now. But if you can be a purist type of organization, you can capitalize on the fact that, hey, Top Rank's on ESPN, whereas UFC's on ESPN. And oh, by the way, PFL's there. It's fine if you have multiple organizations on one platform. But if you can start signing talent and developing it in-house, I think Zuffa boxing is a really, really big market. And we've seen the popularity of boxing rise year over year with some of these out of the market or out of the box type of stars. A Shields Nunes fight, another Mayweather McGregor. And if you could have it under your own banner, I think that's the way that they should go in 2020. It's a little outside the box, but it's something that's definitely in the works, and I could certainly see it happening.
Woo.
So Craig, so your answer is to get into boxing. Your answer is, instead of like promoting a guy like Israel Adesanya, promote, like, how old is Floyd Mayweather? Like 45?
You're already promoting Israel Adesanya. You already had him in one of the biggest, most attended pay-per-views of all time, where he won the title. That's just going to continue on. That's going to be status quo. He should be, and he is recognized as one of the biggest champions in the sport. He's one of the most popular athletes in the sport. You look at the year-end fighter awards, even listening to your year-end fighter awards on MMA Takeover, you would mention him as well. As far as entrance of the year, that was all over the internet. So Israel Adesanya already has that market cornered as one of the biggest stars and growing stars in the sport. Why wouldn't you look outside of the box and do something that, you know, finally put the money where your mouth is and rubber the road and all those other things and actually get this started this year?
So do you remember when Chris Weidman was your fighter of the year and he had the big knockout of Anderson Silva? Did he ever become a superstar? He actually went on a winning streak defending that. They didn't promote him right. They didn't get him on these shows. They didn't have him, you know.
Because he was boring and he didn't promote himself.
Well, he was boring. He knocked out Anderson Silva, and then they fought again and he snapped Anderson Silva's leg. He gave you not one, but two highlight reel things, and they couldn't promote him. Israel Adesanya can. Is he on these late shows? Is he talking to Jimmy Fallon? And
yeah, he's actually on Joe Rogan. I know, you know, we don't like to mention podcasts outside of the network, but he was on the biggest podcast in the world.
Cool. That's one thing. That's one thing.
You only need that one thing nowadays.
Yeah. You know who else was on Joe Rogan? Donald Cerrone. You know who else was on Joe Rogan? Like Brian Kelleher and I don't know. O'Day Osborne was on Joe Rogan. I don't know who. I don't listen to it. But you get my point. Like, you don't have to be
I don't get your point.
You don't have to be the biggest star to be on Joe Rogan. It's just not true. So get him outside of the MMA realm, like, onto the other things, getting the people interested, the casual fans. So your plan is to get into business with Floyd Mayweather, promote Floyd Mayweather, who is now 42 years old, about to turn 43. He's retired twice already. That's your business model, is to get into business with Floyd. And Clarissa Shields, who you say is a star, is she? When's the last time she had a pay-per-view? When's the last time we said, oh, man, I can't wait to see the Clarissa Shields boxing match? Her last opponent, do you have any idea who her last opponent was? Ivana Habassin? Like, that's your plan?
If she wasn't such a big draw, I know our own Mike Heck wouldn't have even bothered to interview her. So she must have been quite the big draw. But realistically speaking, why would you not go into boxing? It's such a hot topic right now. It's growing like, this is a tough one, but like wildfire. It really is. It's really, really on the rise. Why would you not get into that market, especially when you're talking about it in January at the start of the year?
Is it like Floyd Mayweather's pay-per-view buy was like under 500,000 for the Andre Berto fight, the fight right before Floyd Mayweather. This is Floyd Mayweather needed Conor McGregor more than Conor needed Floyd. Conor was pulling pay-per-views over a million, while Floyd Mayweather was under 500,000 the fight before.
Did Ryzen need Tenshin Asakawa, or did they need Floyd Mayweather to attract North American eyes?
Did a lot of North American people watch that?
They freaked out because they couldn't find it. Yeah, they absolutely.
You mean they couldn't find the streaming? They didn't. I ordered it on Fight TV.
If it was more readily available, like with the UFC,
like it's pretty readily. You just go right on Fight TV and order it. Like, listen, did that even like that was like if you went on ESPN, it was like, you know how they have the like list. It was like 9th down on the ticker. Like Clemson beats Auburn in the Outback Bowl. Then it was Tim Tebow gets a double in spring training, and Serena Williams wins the Heineke international.
We don't have to list all 9.
And then it got down there. Like that wasn't a big plus for Ryzen is having Floyd Mayweather. Like you're actually literally proving my point. The fact that Floyd Mayweather is doing everything but boxing to get money should tell you that you should not be going into boxing. And then Clarissa Shields is the big star. Like, honestly, like I didn't even heard of the girl like before she showed up at UFC a couple months ago.
We're just getting you excited for it.
Yeah.
Man, this is tough. We went back and forth here, but at the end of the day, the winner tonight, who put himself in Dana White's shoes more than the other, Craig Allen. Craig, congratulations, man. Again, this isn't what would Craig Allen do for business? Isn't what Keith Schillan would do for business. This is putting yourself in Dana's shoes. And I thought Craig did a better job presenting his argument. That's all that it was. Keith did a great job, made it very competitive. Israel Adesanya, I agree with him 100%. But I agree with Craig as well. I feel like Israel's already on his way up there. That's just the way that it is. I think he'll be there by the end of the year. He'll be at that table, whether Dana sends him on Fallon or Kimmel or not, or Ricky Lake. I mean, if he gets on Ricky Lake, he's definitely going to be a superstar. But Craig, 30 seconds. Talk about whatever you want, sir.
Yeah, go back and watch old clips on YouTube of Arsenio Hall and Ricky Lake, because I'm going to have to, because honest to goodness, I have no idea who Ricky Lake is. If you showed me a picture of Ricky Lake, I wouldn't know who it is. My 30 seconds, I would say check out some of those prospects that we talked about with UFC 246. Mike kind of brought it up, and we didn't really focus on it, but Macy Barber taking on Roxanne Modafferi on ESPN in the featured prelim before a Conor McGregor fight. That's a fight you should definitely watch. I know a lot of people on YouTube and on Reddit have been slagging me for that, but that's one that you should definitely watch, because if she wins, possible title shot on the line with Shevchenko. She wants to become the youngest UFC champ in history, and here's kind of the blueprint to her shot. So definitely check that one out.
And don't sleep on Roxanne Modafferi either. These are the types of fights that Roxy steps up big time for. Keith, what do you want to say besides this is the worst decision since nothing?
I mean, this is the worst decision since Clarissa Shields beat Tori Nelson in Verna. What the hell that is? Yeah, big star. No, this is the worst decision since Houston ran a fake punt. I mean, I get it. Craig was upset that he lost. I absolutely murdered him this round. I'm out.
I disagree, but it is what it is. So thank you, Keith. Craig, congratulations. This is a fun week. Everyone brought it, and, it's a big fight week. UFC 246 coming up on Saturday. The wait is finally over. Conor McGregor is back in the octagon and back into our lives, taking on Donald Cerrone this Saturday. Very excited for it. Make sure you check out Craig's 2-minute picks all over the Fight Night Picks YouTube channel. Check out all the guys' coverage all over this place on social media. Keith at SHERDOG, Davidson, I'm not sure where he is these days, but the Schmo, you know where to find him. And enjoy the fights this week. Enjoy all the coverage heading into it. For Craig Allen, Davidson Baker, Keith Schillan, and the Schmo, I am Mike Heck. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on YouTube. We'll see you back Monday night, recapping everything UFC 246 right here between the links.